So, and this is what I said, in Operation Sindoor also, war and politics was happening as a parallel kind of a phenomenon, and it was being exercised also through communication, which I made a mention initially, both direct and indirect communication. So, second important conclusion what I draw from the statement which I initially said, that war is a continuation of policy by other means, is that war is a rational decision. That means, and I also spoke about reason when I said about government takes the rational decision about war. And it takes this decision when it is exhausted all its other instruments of power. So, but then the important question comes in, this whole start point of this particular war was this Pahalgam terror attack. So is terrorism a rational act of warfare? I don't think that's a rational act, because terrorism has no defined logic, it has no political-military end state. Terrorism is a means and an end in itself. Terrorism is a form of warfare that defines rationality. This is because the terrorist doesn't have anything to lose. He's a non-state actor. If he doesn't have a state, if he doesn't have a state, he's not worried about territory, people, or the ideology, which form the three important constituents of the state. So this is terrorism absolutely irrational if it's happening in standalone mode. But what happens when there's about state-sponsored terrorism? Is this rational? Think that this seems to be a rational decision when state is employing terrorism as an instrument to achieve political objectives. And say so it's a reasoned kind of a decision the state takes, and so as our adversary is concerned, he's taken the decision that to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. And when I say that this has been a state policy, this I am not saying. If you go and look at the literature on issues, you will find Peter Charp, Kristen Fair, who have cited former Director Generals of ISI explicating this particular strategy as to how they will beat India by 1,000 cuts. And this particular doctrine is found in various studies in Pakistan Staff College, etc. So this is a normal talk which happens in Pakistan. And of course, officially we know in 1965, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto declared a 1,000-year war against India when he addressed the United Nations Security Council. And probably Ziaul Haq gave form to this particular doctrine of 1,000 years war. And someone added this 1,000 touch into it. Let me talk about the rationality once again in the context of Operation Bunyan al-Marsus, which I said, I've said once, twice earlier that in this whole business of war, warfare, or use of force, the military people are the ones who are most rational, because we understand that war and warfare is very, very unpredictable, and we also probably understand the consequences of war. So that I think is important. So although lost by Pakistan on 10th of May at about 1 a.m., its aim was to get down India to its knees in 48 hours. Multiple attacks were lost, and in some manner they have escalated this conflict, which we had actually hit only terrorist targets, but also into the military domain. From their perspective, it would have been rational in the sense they would have said that you use military means to hit these targets. But it was also rational on their part. Operation which they thought will continue for 48 hours, folded up in about 8 hours. And on 10th, then they picked up the telephone and said they wanted to talk. And I think that the rationale behind this the realization coming in, stem from two facts. That one is they must have assumed that if they continued this mode, they were likely to lose much more. So hence they picked up the telephone. And second thing, since they had stuck us at multiple fronts, they still did not have the benefit of understanding what they had stuck. So they must have thought they must have stuck, and hence they like to talk now. And if they don't, they tend to lose both. So these were the two factors which would have made them take, but it's only after say 1 or 2 days they would have realized that all their kind of attacks which they had launched against us are not modified, and they had all kind of, this is what had happened. Second thing is, Indian Armed Forces also demonstrated a lot of rationality. We had informed Pakistan on the day we had done this surgical strikes on 7th. We had done it till from 11:05, that's 5, at about 1 o'clock to about 1:30, and 5 minutes later we had read up the Director General of Military Operations to say that we had done this. and they hit only terror targets, military establishments have been out of the purview of the strikes, and they have ensured that there are no collateral damage to civilians, and they need to talk to each other. So that was, I think, the rational decisions. And subsequently, when there was a rhetoric from Pak side, we also said that in case Pakistan hits us, hits military establishments, we are going to hit them back, we'll hit them harder, and if they stop, we are going to stop. So when Pakistan did ask for talks and de-escalation, we also at some point of time, not immediately, at some point of time, I would say, did accept what they were saying. So this is what I thought was the political part of war. And now I talk about the combat part of war. That's the second part, which I said it had four constituents. That's the combatant, the Yodha, the battlefield, combat zone, where fight takes place. It talks about technology, and fourth is about tactics. So these are the four things, I think, important part of warfare. Combatants actually today, earlier we all thought people in uniform, organized military forces are part of combat, but today we have paramilitary forces, mercenaries, contractors, terrorists, jihadis, private companies, big technology. So we had heard about long back about Wagner Group, similarly black water groups. A lot of security companies provide armed security, mission support and risk management services, not only to corporate houses, but also governments. So it's not that combatants are only uniformed people paid for by the government. It's different. And today combatants may also include citizens, neutral citizens or nations, or netizens rather. They can take part independently or otherwise based on their support to any ideology in cyber warfare, psychological operations, media outreach, etc. So the concept of this war will be only conducted by combatants which are paid from the government is getting diluted slowly. There are other players who are coming into play. And along with it, what did we see? Did we see elements of this or green shoots of this in Operation Sindoor? Yes, and to us I would say that this was the kind of first non-contact warfare which we fought. We didn't see each other. We saw it as either at radars or at different ranges, except for what was happening on the line of control. And it was a mix of kinetic and non-kinetic. When I say non-kinetic, that happened in the information domain, that happened in the cyber domain, and of course there was a kinetic operation where destruction was being caused to each other. It was also non-linear in nature. So there's something happening on the line of control and something happening as far back as Noor Khan or Sargodha. So at huge distances from the border and simultaneously, non-linearity. It was networked. Means at least the defensive part of it. You must have read about it, that we had networked our air defense architecture of the Air Force and the Army and the maritime air defense architecture. Trigon, Akash Tir and IECS include, so that they could give one comprehensive kind of a picture. So you can provide a layered kind of view. So better information, faster information available to our side. We had also tried to kind of network a counter US system, which was countering drones. Not so much, but some kind of in this 7, 10, 15 days.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for your insightful lecture on future wars and warfare. So my question is, what are the losses incurred or experienced by Pakistani side during Operation Sindoor, and from this, what can be the potential strategic insight we can draw for future conflicts and the evolution of warfare, sir?
Very nice question. You know, when I was asked about losses on our side, I said these are not important. The results and how you act is important. It would be not very correct to talk about losses. Means numbers, etc. Means I'll give a detailed kind of an answer on this. You see in a match, suppose you go into a football match and you win 3-2. He scored 2 goals and you scored 4 goals. So that's an even sided match. But suppose you go on in a test match, cricket test match, and you win by innings defeat. Then there's no question of how many wickets and how many balls and how many players. It's innings But since there is always this inquisitivity as to the result of your strikes, which was visible, which was more in psychological domain and what was visible to us, all of us, not to us, to globally, everyone. So, based on technical parameters like electronic intelligence, signal intelligence, at some point of time, we will take out this particular data and share it with us to answer those queries and inquisitiveness of people like you who keep telling me how many aircraft did we destroy, how many radars did we destroy. So we'll make a rough assessment of that and come out with that shortly.
One last question.
My name is O. I'm from the Defense Department. So initially, it appeared that Operation Sindoor will be a long-drawn conflict. But what made the Pakistani side capitulate so fast and so suddenly?
Listen, I think in some part I was able to address this. What I said was, from our side, we didn't want to get into a long-drawn kind of a conflict. We've seen our experience in Operation Sindoor. We were there for almost about 9 months. It involves a lot of expenditure, disrupts everything. And we had seen this to some extent after Balakot. There was a deployment which we had mobilized. So in this particular case, what happened was, before this mobilization could be completed, the operations was halted. Of course, Operation Sindoor, as you know, is not over as yet. It continues. It's a temporary cessation of hostilities. There's a need to keep our guard up. So this, I think, is important. But as far as the Pakistani side is concerned, I can make a guess, 2 guesses. That is, one, that they were losing things faster at a very, very long distance. And they thought that if this continued for some more time, they're likely to lose more. And hence, they picked up the telephone. Second thing, give the enemy also, your adversary due. He had also attempted a large number of attacks. On 10, starting from 1 o'clock till about 9:30, 10, huge number of attacks. They continued subsequently also. And he would have assumed that some of them are as successful as Indians have been. Of course, that didn't happen, and he had no way to realize this. Like in the initial stages also, when we are hitting very deep, I'm not talking about the first day. On 7th, we had ensured that we had all kind of imageries. But when it's a dynamic war, then we really did not know what is the effect on Sargodha, what is the effect on Murid, what is the effect on Bulari. So what is the effect on Jacoabad? It's after once you get a satellite image. So the first few hours, you're not very sure. Of course, we were all aided by Pakistanis themselves because they were putting up things in the social media, so we had some idea of its success. But we had to wait for confirmation from satellite imageries and other sources, say signal intelligence or otherwise. So we were quite sure. They were also not sure. They might be hoping that they have also done similar kind of a damage. But probably their hopes were belied after 3 or 4 days when they would have searched the satellite images from whichever country they're buying from, that they have not done. So by the time it was too late. In my concluding remarks, I can only say that Operation Sindoor created a kind of a history of sorts as far as air warfare is concerned. Successful operations were carried out against an adversary which was almost equally matched. It is not operations against an adversary which had no air force or no air defense worth a shot. So it was against an adversary, and against that, if you are able to carry out relentless operations deep inside with precision and offensive in intent, I think that was a big achievement. And we were able to penetrate those air defense networks with impunity and at will. So, history, because I'm saying this is because exhibition of this particular superior air power was demonstrated against someone which already had a good capability. So that was all I had to say about future warfare and wars. I hope you get a fair idea as to how warfare is evolving. And this particular preparedness of the armed forces is first about thinking. You should be able to understand where warfare is going so that we can change your tactics, get your equipment profile right, understand, have your organizational structures right, have your doctrines and concepts right. So in this particular thought process, in this whole, is not the job of only armed forces, people like me, or this young generation who will be doing this probably. after 5 or 10 years, it's also the role of veterans, the academy. Everyone is, it's the whole of nation to understand where we are evolving, what's happening, so that we are better prepared as a nation to take on these kind of challenges. Venom was fueled by General Asim Munir against India and Hindus. Speak just few days or weeks before what happened in Pahalgam. So, since this is a recent decision, it can be also, I believe, that retracted because now Pakistan is faced with a different kind of a prospect that he faces military action in case we find terror happening against us, and also we said that we'll have water as well as this thing will not flow together. So we have kind of raised the bar. We have connected terror to water, and we have drawn out new lines for military operations against